My name is Eric Sampson. I'm 35 years old, and I'm looking in at my newborn daughter through the viewing window at the maternity ward. Her mom is resting comfortably, and I'm waiting for a nurse to come out and suit me up so I can hold my daughter again. For some reason, the nurses always want to put me and other visitors in scrubs and clean us up before they allow us to touch the baby. I guess it makes sense because I wouldn't want anything to happen to my precious little angel before she starts her life out. They suit me up, and I lift her from the nurse's arms. I marvel again at the absolute beauty of the wrinkled little person in my arms. From the first second that I saw her, I loved her more than anything else on this planet, whether she knew it or not. I could already imagine the person she was going to turn out to be. I was so ready to watch her grow and help her along her life's journey. No matter what happens, her mom and I will be there, guiding her along the way. After a half hour that seemed like only a few seconds, I gave her back to the nurse. As I stepped out of the room, I noticed a very attractive blonde woman waiting for me. My happiness evaporated, and my smile transformed itself into a grimace. "Mr. Sampson," said the security guard, "we don't normally let people into the maternity area unless they're family, but this woman said she was related to you." "It's okay," I told him. "Unfortunately, she's my wife." "How's being married to a woman who looks like that unfortunate?" he asked. "Trust me, that witch is batshit crazy," I said just loud enough for him alone to hear. "You looked really good in there holding your baby," said Andrea, stepping up to me. "You're going to be a great father, but I think you should reconsider your actions. This divorce isn't going to happen, no matter what you try. I'll block it any way I can. We need to sit down and talk. Us throwing rocks at each other through our lawyers is only making them rich. Can we just talk? Just for a few minutes?" Andrea, my wife, is beautiful, spoiled, and curious. She's used to getting her own way no matter what happens and simply can't accept it when things don't go her way. Andrea is about 5 feet 7 inches, weighs about 120 well-shaped pounds. At 36, she has a bikini body, a nice trim waist with beautiful long tapering legs. Her features are a little sharp, but she has the bluest eyes you will ever see. She's also a woman that loves sex. She is definitely not a tease or an ice maiden. That's the unfortunate part. I have to be there when Melissa wakes up, I told her. "That gives us about an hour for your talk. Let's go to the visitor's lounge. We should have some privacy there, unless you try to turn this into another shouting match. But remember, you're the one who wants to talk. So if you start yelling or giving me any of your shit, I'll have them throw you the hell out of here." We got to the lounge and sat down in chairs near the back. "It's your show, Andy, so say what you have to say, and let's get it over with." She licked her lips and started talking. "Well, first off, I wanted to tell you that I forgive you for cheating on me. I forgive you for breaking the rules we established for our relationship. I forgive you for getting another woman pregnant and running off with her. I want us to put all of this behind us. And I want you to come home with me so we can get our marriage back on track. I do realize that you'll have to pay some kind of child support to Melissa for the baby, but I'm thinking that you should limit the time that you spend with that child so it's not hard for you to choose between it and our children. I love you, Eric. I've never loved anyone else except you, so I'm willing to overlook everything you did and take you back. I also promise that no mention of this will ever be made. We'll just move forward. I won't try to hold this over your head or anything else. Let's just say this was all a big mistake and erase it from our memory. Melissa always wanted a baby more than anything else, and Mike couldn't give her one. So if we get back together, everyone wins." "Oh, Andy, could we really do that?" I asked with mock sincerity. "You're giving me a get-out-of-jail-free card." "Just this once," she smiled, nodding her head and reaching for me. "I'll never lose you for anything, and I won't share you. You're mine forever. I'd kill Melissa before I'd let her have you." I pulled back from her as if she was on fire. "Kick rocks, you stupid witch," I snapped at her, then got up and walked away. I realized then that Andy should never have been released. She was still crazy. I went down the hall to Melissa's room. I smiled at the nurse and pointed at the door. "She's going to be asleep for a while," the nurse said to me quietly. "I can't think of any place I'd rather be," I said. "I want to be the first person she sees when she wakes up." The nurse smiled again and waved as I went into the room. Melissa was lying on her side, turned towards me. I pulled the covers closer around her and sat down in the chair beside the bed. She was beautiful even sleeping. That has to come from an inner beauty. God knows Andy was beautiful on the outside, but she looked like a screwing shrew when she was asleep. Somehow when she wasn't conscious, her inner ugliness just shone through her mask of sexy facial expressions. As I looked at Melissa's beatific slumbering face, the past 16 months just rolled away. I'm a successful architect, and Andy and I were just moving into a house we built. Some of the neighbors were upset about our house at first because we'd purchased 2 adjoining lots and torn down the existing ranch-styled homes on them. Then we built our dream home on the site and re-landscaped it. I guess our house was kind of big compared to the other homes in the neighborhood, but it was the house of our dreams where we could grow old together and someday raise our family. It took a while for a lot of the neighbors to come around, but Mike and Melissa came over to meet us the very first day we moved in. They lived right next door to us, and you could look into their kitchen from our deck. Mike was kind of burly but with a slight paunch, and constantly had a 2-day beard growth. Melissa was very cheerful and while not in Andy's league was really pretty. Melissa was short at about 5 foot even, and her body, while not like Andy's bikini babe tall thin figure, was very interesting. She had large jugs and a big round bum. Her waistline unfortunately was also kind of thick. If it hadn't been for that gut, her body would have been incredible. They brought over pizza and beer, and we spent that first night getting to know them. It was the first of many nights we'd spend either on our deck, in our pool, or in our living room. Over the next few months, we became the best of friends. Mike and I often went bowling or golfing on the weekends. We were always driving around in either his pickup truck or my hopped-up Mustang GT. I love that car. It has custom paint, a Flowmaster exhaust system, and too many other modifications to talk about. If you saw the car, you'd think it was just like any other red Mustang with stripes along the lower body panels. On closer inspection, you'd notice that the stripes are the outlines of buildings that I designed. It is a beautiful car, and I love it to this day. It's going to be weird putting a baby seat in the back, but you do what you have to. A lot of nights we'd all just hang out either at Mike and Mel's place or at ours. Mike, just like every other guy I'd ever known, couldn't seem to keep his eyes off of Andy. Whether she was just hanging out in jeans or in one of her bikinis, my wife is an eyeful. Have you ever thought about swinging? Mike asked me one night when the women were off doing something. We don't have a swing back here, but maybe that's a good idea, I said. No, you don't. I'm talking about, trying out someone else's stuff. It can really put the spice back in your relationship. After being married for a long time, even the best relationships can get kind of stale. Even when you're eating steak every night, you sometimes want to try a little chicken or some fish, if you know what I mean. No, I don't know what you mean. I'll see you later, Mike, I said, getting up. When I got to bed that evening, Andy asked me why I was so upset. Nothing to worry about, I told her. Mike just said something really stupid. I rolled over and grabbed Andy and started tickling her. While she laughed uncontrollably, I pulled my fur-covered handcuffs from under the pillow, where I'd hidden them. Before Andy realized what was happening, I'd snapped one cuff over her left wrist, and then wrapped the cuffs around the bedpost and snapped the other cuff around her right wrist. "What are you doing, Eric?" she said. Her eyes were as big as saucers. I reached down and grabbed a thick scarf that I'd laid on the bed. I tied one of her legs to the foot post on the bed and the other to the bed frame. My beautiful wife was now tied up, spread eagle on our bed. I opened a drawer on the nightstand and pulled out a large feather and a can of spray lube that was supposed to warm up when blown on or touched. Andy could hear me moving around in the darkness, but she couldn't see what I was doing. I started out by gently running the feather lightly across her shoulder and down her arm. She shivered at the unexpected sensation. "Eric, stop that," she said, but the tone of her voice told me that she wanted me to continue. I sprayed the lube across her jugs and up both legs with a final squirt on her shaved box. "Eric," she said again, stretching my 2-syllable name into a much longer word. She started trying to move her legs together and couldn't. I blew gently on her left jug, causing the spray to begin to warm up. "Oh, please, do that again," she said. I blew on the other jug, and the pungent and musky aroma of Andy's arousal filled my nostrils. I started fingering her as I continued licking, and she was still sensitive from the first one. "No, please stop," she said. But I kept going, knowing that she really didn't want me to stop. "Eric, you'd better get up here and screw me before I pass out," she screamed. Who am I to argue with a lady? I quickly took off my shorts and shirt and started out by straddling her. I kneeled by her head and let my tool dangle right in front of her face. I kept fingering her as I did this. She started whining. "Eric, I'm begging you," she said. "I'll do anything you want. My box is on fire. Screw me, damn it." So I did. I slipped my tool into her and started screwing her. After she came for what must have been the third time, I untied the leg that was tied to the bed frame and flipped her over. "You like it?" I said mirthfully. "You should have warned me so I could open my mouth," she said. "Now it's all wasted." "It's wasted anyway as long as you're on the pill," I said quietly. Then I untied her other leg and uncuffed her hands. I lay down on the bed and pulled the covers over me. The mood was gone. She rolled over to me and tried to kiss me, and I just turned my head. Andy knew that it wasn't the fact that she had my cum all over her face that caused me to pull away. She lay down beside me and said, "Eric, don't worry. There's no one else in the world that I want to have kids with. There's no one else that I love. I just want to enjoy ourselves for a few years before I have to wreck my body with stretch marks, sagging jugs, and fat bumps. I swear to you, we have all the time in the world. I'm going to spend the rest of my life married to you, I swear it," she said. "We're going to be happy and have the best family ever, just not right now." She wrapped her arms around me, and we went to sleep. Andy, since we'd been together, had a habit of sleeping with one leg and one arm over me. She claimed that it had become a habit, and she couldn't get to sleep without me. Andy and I had sex every night and some mornings without fail. She had a very high sex drive and enjoyed all kinds of sex. Whatever, it didn't matter as long as she got off. We were usually all over each other, and I loved her so much that I had trouble believing it sometimes. I went to work every day making the long commute in my Mustang. Andy stayed home and took care of the house. Melissa and I waved to each other often as she drove off in her old Honda every morning. Mike was between jobs, so he stayed home. I was glad of that because it meant that in an emergency, Andy had someone to call who could get to the house far faster than I could. A few weeks after my conversation with Mike about swinging, it came up again. This time it was Andy who brought it up. "Eric," she said, "have you ever wanted to try another woman?" "Hell no," I spat. "I love you, and you're enough for me." "Well, I'm not saying that I want you to go out and just screw some stranger. I'm just saying that maybe we should bring someone else in with us," she said. "It's just something I'm curious about. Besides, we're almost there anyway," she said. "Andy, what are you talking about?" I asked sharply. "Haven't you noticed the last few times that Mike and Mel came over? You and I started kissing, and Mike and Mel started kissing too. And then you started fingering me through the hole in my shorts until I came all over your fingers, baby," she said. "Well, while you were doing it, Mike was staring at me, and I was just kind of wondering." She hesitated. "Wondering what?" I snapped. "Well, what it would be like," she said quietly. "Be more specific," I said sharply. Andy wasn't used to the edge in my tone, and she backed away from me a little bit. I don't think she was ever afraid of me hurting her because God knows I'd die before I ever hit her, but she just wasn't accustomed to me not instantly giving her what she wanted. Let me give you an example. After I'd gotten my first commission and did a great job on it, my then bosses gave me a substantial raise and a bonus. My vision for the money was for us to put it away to start saving for a house. Andy brought me home papers to sign the next day for her BMW. The down payment alone wiped out the bonus, and the monthly note would definitely tax my income. That car cost more than the house we were living in at the time. The end result was that we ate tuna for a month, but Andy got her car. "Be more specific, Andrea. I want to make sure that I understand you clearly," I said again. "What you're asking me for is for you to have sex with another man, right?" "Well, not another man, just Mike," she said quickly. "No," I said sharply. "Wait, I'm sorry that didn't come out the way I wanted it to." "No, never in this life," I screamed as loudly as I could. At that moment, for the first time since I'd met her, I couldn't stand to look at my wife. I got up and knocked the chair I'd been sitting in over and left the room. A few hours later, after I'd gone out for a run and cooled down, I went into the kitchen and saw Andy there seated at the kitchen table eating her dinner. "Here, I'll get you a plate, honey," she said. I walked past her without saying anything, got a beer out of the fridge, and went out onto the deck. I'd always loved the view from this deck. It was part of the reason why it was included in my design. I looked over and saw Melissa sitting at her kitchen table, grading papers probably, and wondered if she knew what my wife, her supposed friend, had proposed. She probably didn't have a clue. Melissa was a pretty woman, not in Andy's class of course, but she just needed to take better care of herself. If she got rid of that gut and toned up a little bit, she'd be pretty hot. I couldn't believe my mind was wandering so much as I watched the moon from my deck. I guess I wanted to think about anything other than Andy's suggestion. I knew before I married her that Andy had an extremely high sex drive. I'd always thought that I was enough for her. We were both pretty compatible sexually, I always thought. Andy brought the willingness to do it anytime and anywhere, and I brought the imagination and creativity. She never knew what to expect from me, from candles and roses to me tying her up and spanking her. But she did know that whatever we tried, it was always done with love and affection. Obviously, she was starting to need more. I think that she saw this as just another little thing for her to beg for and try to get her way on. I saw it as far more serious. To me, it was the first sign that we were drifting apart, and I loved her so much that it just broke my heart. It's a really beautiful night out. It's warm, and that big old moon is really lighting everything up, she said from behind me. Is there anybody here who'd like to try skinny dipping in our pool with me, or should we just take this upstairs? She came up behind me and wrapped her arms around me. Andrea, let go of me. I came out here to be alone, so I could think. But it's your house too, so if you want the deck, I'll go somewhere else, I said. I'll go sit by the pool. Is that far enough from you? She snapped. Not nearly, I snapped right back at her. I got up, went back inside the house, and grabbed my keys from the island in the center of the large chef's kitchen. Before Andy could react, I was out the front door and driving away. My Mustang's exhaust system and V8 growl alerting the neighborhood that I was out and about. I seemed to just drive forever that night, and though it made me feel better, I knew that it wasn't going to make my problem go away. I say my problem because even though Andy was the one who was screwing up our marriage, it literally hurt me to do anything that displeased her. Over the course of one stupid evening, I'd yelled at her, cursed at her, and walked away from her. I'd never, in all of our time together, done even one of those things. Usually when we argued, our pattern was different. We'd compromise, and I'd bend a little more, and a little more until I either agreed with her or she got her way. Andy was my soul, so in some ways giving her what she wanted pleased me as well. Andy's smile made me feel good inside, especially when I'd done something to cause it. There was simply no way for me to ever share her with anyone else, not even temporarily. I'd always been paranoid about her love for me. I remember the first time we visited her family. I was jealous of the time she spent with her brother and sisters. I needed to have her all to myself. Her dad had even commented once that his usual warning to the men who dated his daughters wasn't necessary in my case. Son, he said, I'm calling you son, because I'm sure you're going to end up marrying my daughter. She loves you, and she'd be a fool to let you get away. Normally, I tell guys that if they hurt my little girls, I'll track them down and kill them myself, but in your case, I have a far different warning. I know that you love Andrea, but remember, you can tell her no from time to time. It'll actually make your relationship stronger in the end. If you keep on going the way you are now, sooner or later, she's going to ask you for something that you aren't ready to give her, without giving up a piece of your soul. By that point, it will be too late because she won't be used to you not giving in on anything. You're a good man, he told me. Andrea needs that, but don't let her turn you into something that you don't want to be. I'll never do anything to hurt her, I told him. I'm not worried about you hurting her, he said. You clearly love her too much for that. I'm more worried about her hurting you. The next morning, I was on my way out of the house for my commute to the office when Andy came out of our bedroom. She looked like hell. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she just looked off. Where the hell were you? She snapped. You know I can't sleep without you. I got back at around 1, I said calmly. I just drove around for a while to clear my head and to think. What would you need to think about? Why didn't you come to bed? She asked. I slept in one of the first floor guest rooms, I said and walked past her. I barely got any work done that day. Andy called me twice on my way to work and then started texting me. The first thing my secretary, Myrna, told me as I walked into my office was to call Andy ASAP. I didn't, and 10 minutes later my cell phone rang. What is it, Andrea? I asked. Whether you know it or not, my job is not just an extension of home. I have work to do here. That's why I come here. What's wrong with you? She asked softly. Don't you love me anymore? We'll talk when I get home. Please don't call me anymore today. I hung up the phone and started trying to work, but I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. The thing I kept coming back to was Andy. I looked up the cost for bricks versus siding for a project I was working on. Before I could finish the math, I was wondering what my life would be like without Andy in it. I ended up doing the same calculation 4 times and never finished it. I turned on my computer and switched to a project where I could just draw. The house I was working on was for a single guy. He was a high-profile lawyer and wanted something really different. I'd come up with a design that blew his socks off. The house was mostly underground. The only thing visible above the surface was a large sunroom. The house had already been built and was nearly ready for occupation. I just needed to finish the designs for the landscaping. Drawing wasn't a good idea either, though. I couldn't even connect 2 frigging lines without thinking about Andy. I went out to lunch with a couple of clients and one of my partners to discuss a prospective commercial project that would make a lot of money for all of us. I still found myself wondering what Andy was wearing and what she was doing at that moment. Did she still love me? Where had I gone wrong? Could I possibly undo whatever I'd done to make her need someone else? What did Mike have that I didn't? When I got home that night, I was ready to talk to Andy, but it didn't happen. As soon as I stepped into the house, I smelled steaks on the grill. I walked through the kitchen and out onto the deck and saw Andy in one of her bikinis and Mike grilling on my Weber. Melissa was sitting at the table grading papers. She was wearing a dark-colored one-piece swimsuit. Her legs under the table looked far better than I'd expected, and her jugs as she leaned over the table concentrating on the papers she graded were amazing. I think my look at her was more one of curiosity than lust, because though I'd noticed that her body was better than I'd ever thought, I wasn't aroused by it. I went back into my bedroom and changed into a pair of jeans, comfortable shoes, and a t-shirt. "Hey, shouldn't you be putting on a swimsuit?" smiled Andy. "Why?" I asked. "Well, honey, we're all hanging out at the pool, and we usually just wear swim stuff. Even fuddy-duddy Melissa is wearing a swimsuit," she said, smiling. The smile quickly faded when she saw that I wasn't smiling. "Eric, I was just joking. You know I love Melissa. She's like my best friend. I know you're tired after all of that work, so just come on down. You can wear whatever you'd like. Your steak is almost ready. If you hurry, you can eat it, fresh off the grill the way you like it." Andy went back out to the pool. I heard her say he was just getting changed. "He'll be right down." I went back out the front door. I don't think they even realized that I was leaving until they heard my Mustang's loud-ass exhaust system. I drove down by the lake and stopped off at a Burger King on the way. I parked in front of the lake and ate my double Whopper with cheese, while I played some games on my iPad. After I ate, I read a few stories about swingers on one of those internet websites. I had nothing against people who wanted to trade partners, but it just wasn't for me. I got out of the car and spent some time throwing rocks into the lake. During the evening, I saw several attractive single women pass by, either alone or in groups. A few of them looked at me. One or two even started walking my way and attempted to start a conversation. I think my body language and the fact that I held my wedding ring up to punctuate every sentence gave them the impression I wanted them to get. They quickly backed off and left me alone. The thing that upset me the most was as the sun went down, seeing several couples who were clearly in love, walking hand in hand along the waterfront. As they smiled at each other and hugged each other or stopped for a kiss, I wanted to shoot every screwing one of them. My jealousy over what they had and I'd probably lost made me want to go up to each guy and tell him something. "Run away from this witch as fast as you can before she rips your heart out," I'd say. "Sure, it's great now, but is it really worth the pain you'll go through when this 304 decides you're not enough for her and she wants to screw your friends?" I stayed out a little longer that night. It was closer to 2 a.m. when I got home. Andy was lying on the couch in the living room with a blanket. As softly as I closed the door, it still woke her up. Her eyes were red as hell again. She'd clearly been crying. I didn't say a word to her. I didn't want to upset her any further, so I just turned and headed up the stairs. "Eric, what is wrong with you?" she shouted. "Just yesterday, and for the past 10 years you've been all over me. And now you can't even stand to be in the same room with me. It's like I'm a piece of shit on your shoe, and you're just trying to scrape me off." "Andrea, I have no intention of trying to speak to you while you're screaming at me," I said. "I came home with the intention of trying to talk to you, but you needed to have a party. You wanted to talk to me so badly while I was at work, but once I got home that need had just evaporated. I need to get some sleep because I still have to go to work tomorrow, so why don't you pencil an appointment for me in on your busy schedule? We'll talk then." "What party?" she asked. "It was just Mike and Melissa. We see them most nights anyway. They practically live here. What is wrong with you? Don't you love me anymore?" "Yes, Andy, I love you. I've always loved you. I guess that's the problem with us, isn't it?" I said. "Once again, I have to work tomorrow. I need sleep. Why don't you call Myrna and set up an appointment for us to talk?" I headed back down the stairs to get away from her. I was really proud of myself for my restraint. "Where are you going?" "Our bedroom is up here," she snapped. The only sounds audible through the house as I fell asleep were the sound of the door to the downstairs guest room door closing and Andy sobbing. The next evening, Andy was waiting for me at the kitchen table. There was something cooking in the oven, and the house smelled great from whatever it was. "Can we talk now?" she asked. I sat down at the table across from her. "Eric, what is going on with us?" she asked. "One day we're the perfect couple, and I'm sure above everything else that you love me. The next day, you can't stand to even look at me. We haven't had sex in 2 days, and while that doesn't seem out of the ordinary for most couples, for us that's an eternity. I miss you. I'm going crazy. I want us back like we're supposed to be." "Andy, that may not be possible," I said. "Why not?" she asked. "What did you do? Did something happen while you're out driving around?" "Andy, I didn't do shit, other than to drive around alone. You screwed us up," I snapped. She shook her head. I didn't do anything, she said. So you don't think telling me you want to screw some other guy hurt us? I snapped. You don't think that my being not enough for you hurt us? I've read stories about open marriages and swingers, Andy. They rarely ever turn out happy. In most cases, they only start the couple down the road to divorce. Not all of them end up in divorces, but a bigger percentage of them break up than stay together. It's especially true in the cases where only one partner wants to swing. Anything that swings open also swings closed. That's what this is all about, she said, laughing. I've been going through 2 days of hell thinking you don't love me anymore because of something I was curious about. Curiosity killed a cat, Andy. I really thought that was over with, she said. You said, no. I let it drop. End of subject. But nope, you need to go off and stew over it and sulk like a screwing baby. God damn it, Eric. After listening to Mike talk about it, I just wondered, especially after that last time we were all together, what it would be like. You're the only guy I've ever been with. You know how much I enjoy sex, and I just wanted to know if all guys are the same. It's not like I'm going to fall in love with Mike. He's a lazy, good-for-nothing slob, and he'd be the best person for me to try out anyway. So you decided to try this out after talking to Mike? I said. That figures. He asked me about it about 2 weeks ago, and I turned him down flat. I guess one of us thinks our marriage means something, and now we know which one. Mike doesn't care about your sexual awakening or your curiosity. He just wants to screw you. He's stuck with Melissa, who, while a very nice woman, is kind of dowdy. He starts seeing you walking around half naked all the goddamn time and decides to see if he can get into your pants. I guess that makes you feel special or curious, huh? That's probably not all there is to it, but it's one of the reasons I thought about Mike, she snapped. I did want to try someone else out, and I picked Mike because he is no danger to us. He's your best friend, so he wouldn't try to take advantage of the situation. I'm not attracted to him, so I'm not going to want him. It's only going to be one time, and you'll be there. Maybe you can satisfy your curiosity with Melissa. And Mike shoots blanks. There is no way he could get me pregnant. Oh, you made a list. I said, Eric, this isn't about us. I don't want to be with anyone except you for the rest of my life. I want us to grow old together like we planned. I'm not going to fall in love with Mike and leave you. It's not about you not being enough for me. It's only sex. There's a big difference between love and sex. No, Andy, I said. I thought you loved me, she said. I guess I was wrong. You're full of shit, and you always have been. Oh, Andy, I love you. You say it so much it's like a broken record. But the one time I need something from you that's a little bit out there, you shut me down. It's only going to be one time. No, I said. That's just like you, she snapped. You're so selfish. All you ever think about is what you want. I don't matter. If not letting you screw some guy is being selfish, then I guess I am, I told her. Andy, I do love you. I love you way too much to ever want to share you with anyone else. That's what I mean about being selfish, she snapped. You just don't know how to share. We've been together for 10 years. We probably have sex at least 7 or 8 times a week, if not more. From the day we got together, no one else has ever touched me. That's 7 or 8 times 52 weeks in a year, which is about 400 times a year at least. Multiply that times 10 years and you've screwed me over 4,000 times, Eric. I was just asking to let someone else do it once. If the only reason we're together is because no one else gets to screw me, our relationship is pretty sad. I didn't say anything. I was done talking. You know, I could have gone out and done this behind your back and not said anything, she said. I could have gone out, found some guy and screwed him to satisfy my curiosity and never told you. You would never have known. But I tried to be honest with you, and look what it got me. It's great to know that you trust me, Eric. What's that expression? Love without trust means nothing. I came to you and tried to talk to you about my feelings, and this is what I get. Thanks for nothing, Eric, but it's my body, so I get to make this decision. Good night, Andrea, I said. Wait, Eric, I don't want this talk to end this way. We have to come to some kind of solution, she said. I'm going out, Ron, I told her. Andrea, you're a grown woman. Do what you have to do. But if you do, make sure you can handle the consequences of what you do, because this conversation may not be the only thing ending around here. Where are you going? She screamed. We're not done. We might just be, I said. I changed my clothes and went out to run. When I got back from my run, I was sweaty, but I felt better. I got into the shower and turned the water on. I didn't notice that Andy had joined me until I heard the door close. She rubbed her hands down my back. I moved away from her as quickly as I could. Andy, this house has 3 bathrooms. Find another one, I said, pushing her away from me. I showered while Andy sat there with a shocked look on her face. Then I got dressed. Are you ready to finish our talk? She asked. Our talk is over, I said. See you later. If you walk out that door, I'm going to screw Mike, she said. Andy, you're going to anyway. You had your mind made up before we even started talking. I don't even know why you felt you needed to tell me, I said as I looked at her. She looked down at the floor and couldn't meet my eyes. I wish you could understand what I'm going through and just let me have this one thing. It won't mean anything, she said. If you do it, Andy, things with us will never be the same. I can't watch you all the time. So I hope your curiosity is worth our marriage. But like you said, it's your body and your decision, I said. Maybe you're the one who's throwing us away with your stubbornness, she said. The only reply I made was slamming the door on my way out. That night, I came home early and went to bed in the guest room as I'd been doing for most of the week. Andy knocked on the door at about midnight, saying she wanted to talk. I'd locked the door so she couldn't get in, and when I heard her, I pretended to be asleep. The next day, my world started to fall apart. I got home at the usual time and noticed that instead of sitting in her kitchen grading her papers, Melissa was sitting on her front porch doing it. Hi, Mel, I shouted. She looked up at me and looked awful. She was crying her eyes out. I went over to her to see what was going on, and I knew. I couldn't sit in the kitchen and watch them out on your deck, she said through her tears. I stormed into the house and saw Mike getting ready to dive into my pool. Just as he leaped into the air arcing for the water, I kicked him right in the face as hard as I could. He fell into the water and spluttered out a mouthful of it. His nose was busted and blood was pouring down his face. Get the hell out of my house, I told him. Don't ever come back. Hey buddy, calm down. It's over and done with. She wanted it. She was the one who suggested it in the first place. She told me you were okay with it. So I went for it. Who wouldn't? Don't make me have to ask you to leave again, I said. I won't be nearly as nice the second time. I turned and saw Andy coming out of the house. She hadn't heard anything that happened with Mike and me. She ran up to me smiling. I told you it wouldn't mean anything, she said. Now that it's over, we can go back to normal. I pulled out my iPhone and called a local taxi company and gave them our address. The taxi should be here in about 10 minutes. That's how long you have to pack your shit, I said. If you're here a minute after that, I'm throwing you in the street in your bikini. Eric, what's going on? She asked. We're done, Andy. It's over. You can go to your parents' house, a motel, or stay with Mike. I don't care, just get the hell out of my house, I screamed at her. Please, Eric, it's over. It won't happen again, she whined. You told me last night to go ahead and do it. I knew you weren't happy about it, but just told me to go ahead so I could get this out of my system and we could get back to us. Andy, maybe that's what you heard, but it's not what I said. You were the one who said that if I walked out the door, you were going to screw Mike. I said that you were probably going to do it anyway. That was not me saying for you to do it. Since this whole idea came up, I have let you know that I was against it. I also warned you that if it was something you needed to do, that you should be ready for the consequences. These are the consequences. You now have 6 minutes left to pack your shit before the taxi gets here. I don't need a taxi, she said. I'll drive my BMW to my parents' house. When you get your head out of your bum, that's where I'll be. Andy, the car is in my name. If you take it, I'll report it stolen, and you will be in jail before nightfall, I said. She looked at my face and saw that I was serious and ran into the house crying. A few minutes later, the taxi pulled up. Hey, buddy, did someone from here call a cab? Asked the driver. I just nodded my head. Andy, your ride is here, I screamed. If he leaves, you're going to have to walk. I gave the driver $100 and told him to take her anywhere she wanted to go. Andy came out of the house carrying a hastily packed overnight bag. Report. You should have packed a lot more than that. You're not coming back, I told her. Please, Eric, we need to talk, she whined to my rapidly receding back. A few minutes after the cab pulled away, Andy started calling me. I turned my phone off and shut off the ringers on all of the phones in the house. I went outside on the deck and sat down. As badly as I felt, there was someone who felt worse. Come, Mel, misery loves company, I said. We're going out to eat. She didn't say anything, she just sat there. So I grabbed her arm and pulled her up and stuck her in the Mustang's front passenger seat. We drove around until I found what looked like a nice restaurant. I ordered for both of us, got the food to go, and got back into my car. I drove us out to the lake, the same place I'd been driving to every night anyway. We ate in silence, and then all of a sudden Mel started unloading on me. Why would he? Well, I know why he would, but why would she do that to you? Are they crazy? I know that Mike has no respect for me, but I thought that Andrea loved you. I'm sure she does. All she ever talks about is you. Eric this, my Eric that. Why would she do this? I thought she was my friend. I started rubbing her back, and she sobbed a bit and started talking again. I know that Mike has been angry at me lately, and this is only his way of getting back at me for a remark I inadvertently made, but this is overkill, she said. I'm sorry, Eric, this must be worse for you than it is for me. I'm fine, I said. What do you mean Mike is angry at you? Well, Mike had an accident when he was younger and can't have kids. I knew it already when we got married. I'm fine with it. I've always wanted kids, but I wanted Mike just as much. So I became a teacher. Lately it just hasn't been enough, and I really want to experience motherhood. Eric, I want a family. I want to share all of this love that I have and bring up my own kids instead of teaching everyone else's. So I approached Mike about possibly adopting a baby. He went apeshit. His exact words were, "Oh, so I'm not a man since I can't knock you up. Well, which I'll show you who's a man. I'll screw that little 304 next door and make you watch." It took 3 weeks, but he did it. We didn't say much for a while. As it got dark, the lovebirds came out, and I was really too upset to watch them strolling hand in hand in front of that lake. Besides that, there were just too many big-ass rocks that were the perfect size for throwing, so we left. I went home to an empty house. Melissa went home to Mike. I could hear him screaming at her at first, and her screaming back. After a while, the screaming stopped, and I saw her sitting at her kitchen table with her papers. The next morning, I went to work as I always did. Myrna handed me a stack of messages from Andy. I dropped them all into the trash basket and told her not to forward any calls from Andy to me. If she called me, just tell her I wasn't accepting calls or messages from her. Then I gave her my iPhone and had her go over to the AT&T store and have my phone number changed. At about 10 o'clock that morning, I got a call from Robert Morgan, Andy's dad. He was going to be in town this morning and wanted to take me to lunch. I met him at the Texas Roadhouse at noon. I hadn't seen him in about 3 weeks, and at his age, this kind of stress couldn't be good for him. "Hi, Eric," he said. "Let's get down to it. We both know why we're here. I warned you about this before you married her. She can stay with us for a few days while you two cool off, but Martha and I want to stay out of this." "Well, when you and Martha put her out, she can stay with her sisters for a while and then her brother," I said. "Hopefully by that time we'll have some kind of financial settlement made so she can find a place of her own," I said quietly. "Eric, what are you talking about?" he asked. "Well, in this state, it'd take about 6 months minimum for a divorce to become final, but our lawyers will work out the settlement long before that," I said. "Just between us, I'd rather come up with a lump sum payment instead of any kind of monthly alimony where I'd have to write her a check every month or whatever. I just want this over with and settled so I can move on with my life." "Eric, I still do not understand you. Andrea said you'd had a difference of opinion and you flipped out on her, so she decided to stay with us for a few days while you calmed down. She cried her eyes out last night and won't eat a thing. I know my daughter. When Andrea is right about something, or believes that she's right, she's as cold as ice. But last night she was crying her eyes out. I know she's done something to push you too far finally. Did she buy another car? You guys didn't have more than $50 a week to live on last time she did that. She couldn't even drive it anywhere because you couldn't afford gas for it. I thought you two were kind of well off financially now, though. Robert, the first, don't think I should be the person to tell you what Andy did," I said. "It's not my place to talk about someone else's actions." "God damn it," he said. "She really screwed you over, didn't she? And the stupid thing about it is that I can see by the way you're on the verge of tears that you still love her. Eric, I warned you once about her. Whatever she did, though, try to work it out. She loves you, and you clearly love her. You two should be together, but don't back down. Maybe you should consider marriage counseling, though, before you go for a divorce. I've heard you tell her more than once that you'd do anything for her. Isn't she worth just one chance to save your marriage? Andrea has always been strong-minded. I raised her that way," he said. "You know how the two of you like to sit back on that big old deck behind your house and watch the moon? Well, Andrea used to like to climb out of her window onto the roof and watch the moon when she was a little girl. I told her not to do it because she'd fall off the roof and break her neck. She did it anyway, so I beat her bum and nailed her windows shut. One week, I was out of town on business and Martha was at her ladies' auxiliary meeting. Andrea got the hammer, pulled all of the nails out of the window, and climbed out onto the roof. It had rained the day before, and the tiles were still slippery. Andrea fell off the roof and broke her arm. If the bushes hadn't broken her fall, she was falling headfirst. She probably would have broken her neck. After that, she never went out on the roof again. Andrea can learn," he said. "But sometimes she has to learn the hard way by losing something really important to her. Maybe having to be away from you for a little while will solve this. I'm going to ask her what she did, and I'll get back to you. For the next week or so, my life moved in two directions at the same time. I started spending time with Melissa. It just seemed natural. She was really pissed at Mike, and I was missing Andy a hell of a lot. Melissa started running with me in the evenings. She also started using my gym. I think a lot of it was just her anger and frustration over Mike. We talked a lot about our situations as well. If Mike loved me or treated me nearly as well as you treat Andy, I'd forgive him anything, she said. But in our case, that's the problem. Mike doesn't love me. Maybe he did once, but now I'm just an old shoe to him. I go out to work every day and bring the money in, while he's been unemployed for the last 4 years. When I get in, I have to do the cooking and the cleaning before I get to grade my papers. I'm tired of being taken for granted, and this was just the last straw. I've never told anyone this before, but he's cheated on me before this. Andy knew that I was totally against this from the beginning, I said. This time she just pushed me too far. Eric, we're friends, so 2 things, she told me. Number 1, every time anyone mentions her name, you almost start crying because you love her so much, and being away from her is killing you. Number 2, you've been together for 10 years, and this is the first mistake she's made. For your own sanity, give her another chance. At least talk to her before you give up on her. The easy way out is to just walk away without trying to fix it. I only wish this was Mike's first time screwing up so I could forgive him, but this has happened too many times for me. Andy showed up at my office the next day. The security guards had been warned not to let her in the building, so she sat outside the building and cried until someone called the police. The policeman came into the building asking to see me. Sir, your wife is downstairs, and she's not in a good way. We need you to come down and talk to her, to keep her from doing something to herself or someone else, said the first officer. No, I said. Have a nice day. Sir, this conversation isn't over, said the cop. He was obviously getting pissed about my flippant attitude and wanted to prove something. How about if we book you on refusal to cooperate and put you in the same cell as your lovely wife? Then you'd have to talk to her, sir, he said. How about if I snap my finger? I said, looking him straight in the eye. What would that do, sir? He asked. When I snap my finger, one of my assistants will call my lawyer. He'll be at the station before we get there. By the time you get me to the building for your bogus investigation, you'll be suspended, and I'll be suing the city for more than you'll make in your entire career. To save us further embarrassment, why don't we take this into my office so I can explain what's really going on here to you? I told him. When we got inside the office, I asked him if he was married. He told me that he was. I asked him what he'd do if his wife asked him about sleeping with his best friend. He told me there's no way he'd stand for it. That's what she did, I told him. I told her I wouldn't stand for it, but she went ahead and did it anyway. I called her a cab and sent her to her parents while we work our way through the divorce. She can't reach me at home, so now she's harassing me at work. I'm a partner here, and we own the building. I have a right to bar entrance to anyone who could cause a scene or disrupt my business. I treated that woman like a queen, and that's how she repaid me. I told him, I don't want to ever see her again. I have never abused her, hit her, or even yelled at her. Don't I have the right to be left alone in my own place of business? Sir, you should file a restraining order, he said. We had no idea of the situation when we arrived. Thank you for explaining it to me. We won't bother you any further. But sir, can I ask you one more thing? I nodded. If you really don't want to have anything to do with her, why are you so sad right now? You look, excuse me, I don't mean to insult you, but you look like you're on the verge of tears. You obviously love her a lot. Why not at least talk to her? He was of course right. It was time to talk to her. I went downstairs just as she was getting back into a Ford Fusion. Probably Martha's car. I knew Robert drove a Cadillac STS. I tapped on the window, and she jumped out of the car and tried to hug me. I backed away from her. Eric, I miss you so much. Please let me come home. I keep trying to tell you it's over, she said. Andrea, if you want to talk, I'll listen, but it needs to be in private. I don't want to be embarrassed at work by you. Meet me at my house tonight at about 7, I said. Don't you mean our house? She said. I'll just go there now and wait. I'll make us dinner. Andrea, all of the locks have been changed. It's not our house. Maybe after the divorce you'll get it, who knows. I don't want any dinner. I'm just giving you a chance to say what you need to say, and I have a condition. What's the condition? She asked. If you want to have this meeting, you need to tell your parents the truth about what happened between us. None of this misunderstanding shit. Have your dad call me at 7 just when you getting there so he can tell me that he knows what happened, or don't come. I won't let you in until I've spoken to him. Eric, can't we keep this between us? She whined. No one else needs to know. If I don't hear from your dad, I don't let you in. And this time I call the police myself, I said. I got some bad news that day at work. The buyer for my nearly completed underground house had been killed in an auto accident. I was pretty sure I could sell the house, so I scheduled the landscapers to go ahead and finish it so I could list it and get it sold. The house was too bizarre to be everyone's cup of tea, but the right buyer would be willing to pay top dollar for it. At 6 o'clock, I went out for my run with Melissa. We had a good run together. I could run faster alone, but I wouldn't have nearly as much fun. So how are things at the house of Mike and Mel? I asked. Frosty as hell, she laughed. He doesn't talk to me, I don't talk to him. But you know what? I'm enjoying it. For the first time since we got married, he isn't ordering me around. I got one of those brochures from the adoption places and I've been going through it. There aren't nearly as many stipulations concerning single-parent adoptions as there used to be. Of course, I have to find a lawyer and get the divorce settled first, but I finally realized that he needs me a lot more than I need him. I got home at 6:45 and had the feeling that I was being watched. I went into the house and showered. At 6:58, the phone rang. I picked it up and answered it. Eric, I'm really sorry, son. I understand why you're upset. I can't believe that a daughter of mine would ever behave that way. I still think that there's a chance for the two of you to work this out, though, if you're willing to forgive her and put it behind you. A few minutes later, I put the phone down and went to the door. Andrea was standing there. Can I come in? She asked. I feel so stupid asking you that. This is my house too. Let's just talk here on the porch, I said. It's a nice night, and it feels good out here. Andy, we're not back together. We're only here to talk, I said. You were the one who wanted to talk to me so badly, so I'll let you go first. You tell me what you have to say, then we'll go from there. What do you want me to say? She said. I want our life back. What more is there to say? I know you still love me. It'll take us a little while to get over this, and then it'll just be in the past. We've been apart now for 2 weeks. You've called me hundreds of times, sent your dad to talk to me, bothered me at work, lied to your parents about why we broke up. And that's all you have to say? I was getting even more upset. What do you want me to say? She asked. Nothing, Andrea, I said, standing up. I'll see you soon. I started going into the house, and she grabbed my arm and started crying. She tried to force me to turn around, but I wouldn't let her pull me around. She came around to the front of me and noticed that I was crying too. Tears were falling from my eyes, rolling down my cheeks and making tiny little drop marks on the tile of the front porch. What'd I have to say to fix this? She shouted. All of a sudden, I lost it. I pushed her away from me harder than I ever had. I was really glad she didn't fall off the porch because I'd have probably gone to jail for assault. How about 2 words, Andrea? I screamed. Number 1, sorry. Have you ever said you're sorry for any of this? Are you sorry because you betrayed our marriage vows? Are you even sorry for what you've done to us? Are you sorry for hurting me? You know you really ripped my heart out. How about for screwing up a marriage that was probably going to last forever? I guess you don't know that word, though. You know what? I can see now how stupid I've been this whole time. And that brings up the second word. Love. You see, ever since we got together, Andrea, it's never been about us loving each other. It's always been about me loving you. I'm supposed to just fall down and worship the great goddess Andrea. Well, screw you, Andrea. Wait a minute, Mike already did. That's why we're here. I went into the house and slammed the door. I left her out there on the porch crying. After about 20 minutes, she rang the doorbell. I looked out the peephole and opened the door a crack. Andrea, I'm done talking to you. Get a lawyer. You're going to need one. I'm sorry, she said. I do love you, and I don't want to lose you. I don't want to live the rest of my life without you. This isn't the way this was supposed to happen. I went back out on the porch to listen to her. Eric, I'm curious about a lot of things. I stuck a pin into an electric socket to see what would happen when I was a kid. Now, I wanted to find out what having sex with someone else would be like. I found out. It wasn't nearly as good. In fact, it was nothing. It was nowhere near as good as what we have. It was a mistake, but you've blown it all out of proportion. It's not like I cheated on you, and I don't consider what I did a violation of our marriage vows. I told you what I was going to do. I wanted you to be there, but you refused. I wanted it to be exciting and fun, but it was just boring. I didn't even have one shitty orgasm, just fat old Mike humping away on me. I barely even got wet, and he doesn't last very long. And for that I have to give up my house, my car, my marriage, my husband, and my happiness? That just doesn't seem fair. Andrea, I told you there'd be consequences, I said. You just didn't listen. You never do. Everything always has to be what you want. We really didn't have much of marriage to begin with. This was supposed to be something new for us to bring into the bedroom and try out every once in a while, she said. You try out women and bring new tricks home, and so would I. I don't want us to get bored with each other, she said. Andrea, I never wanted anyone except you. Only now you've ruined that because I don't even want you anymore, I snapped. She looked as if I'd slapped her. After 10 years, I make one mistake, and that's it. Please give me one more chance. I'll do anything you want. We'll go to counseling like my dad suggested. You can do anything you want for revenge or to make yourself feel better. Whatever it takes, I'll do. I promise. This won't ever happen again. Aren't we worth one more shot? You've always said you'd do anything for me. I'm begging you, please just give me a chance. Let me have this one mistake. I swear you won't regret it ever. She looked at me and she knew she had me. You can move back in tomorrow, I told her. But you really need to find a therapist for our counseling sessions. Her smile could have melted a glacier, and she jumped towards me. I backed away from her and put my hands up. We're not ready for that yet, I said seriously. I'll see you tomorrow. The next evening, as I finished my run, Melissa pointed to the porch. There's your wife, she said. Forgive me if I don't come up to talk to her. I know I'm going to have to eventually, but tonight just isn't the night. See you tomorrow, Mel, I said. Are you sure that's a good idea? She asked. Why wouldn't it be? We're friends now, better friends actually because of our shared experience. I smiled. Well, I just thought that maybe Andy wants to spend more time with you, she said softly. Then she should learn to run, I said. Mel, you and I have nothing to do with Andy and I. I learned a lot about her through this incident, and I want things to work out between us, but I'm not sure I'll be able to. Some things you can get past, and some things are deal breakers. In this case, I'm the only one who can make that decision, and I don't have a clue. I love her so much that I ached every day that she was away. I don't know if I agreed to this because it was the right thing to do, or just to stop the pain. My skin crawls when she gets close to me. I'm just not sure we can make this work. You're not sure you can make what work? Asked Andy. Hello, Melissa, she said coldly. Andy walked closer to me and tried to take my hand. I moved it away from her and said, I'm not sure that we can make us work again. I'm sure enough for both of us, so you don't have to be, she smiled. Just watch. Everything will be better than it was before. I promise. Nothing will ever come between us again. What the hell have you been eating? There's nothing in the fridge, she yelled. Wait, there's some salmon in the freezer. Why don't we grill it? Out on the deck. I'll make some rice and some veggies to go with it. Tomorrow I'll go shopping while you're at work. We did exactly that. The first night back together was awkward beyond belief. Andy kept talking to fill every lull in the conversation. It was as if she thought that any time we stopped talking, we'd break up again. In my heart, I knew that the easy chemistry we once shared was shattered. I hoped that one day we'd get it back, but I wasn't sure when or how that could ever happen. Andy started to tell me something, but her words were drowned out by a loud crash and a bunch of yelling from next door. Does that go on often? Asked Andy. Almost every night, I replied. When did it start? She asked. I just looked at her like she was stupid. Oh, she answered. I guess I'm responsible for that too. But they've been married for longer than we have. They'll scream for a while to blow off some steam, and then they'll be fine. I'm sure of it. Mel is saving her money for a divorce lawyer. She's the one who's working. She's done with Mike for good. Unless something drastic happens in the next few weeks. They're done, I said. How do you know that? Asked Andy. How do you know that? Andy asked. Mel told me, I replied. For a man who won't touch me, and barely seems to be talking with his own wife, you seem to be pretty chummy with Melissa, snapped Andy. Everyone needs to have someone they can trust, I said. Someone to talk about their problems to. That's the point, snapped Andy. That's supposed to be me. That always was you. Until you became the problem and lost my trust, I said. Trust is something that has to be earned over time. When we first got together, it took a while before we came to rely on each other. It was easy then because we had no history and had never hurt each other. For over 10 years, we loved each other, trusted each other implicitly, and we had a bond. We had a chemistry based on us almost knowing each other's thoughts. Our hearts beat together, Andy. I didn't care about friends or family or work or money. Nothing came before you. You came before me. I would have died for you. I had 2 wishes, Andy. Do you know what they were? Yes, she said sadly. All I wanted was to grow old with you, and for us to have a baby or 2 together. I don't need to be rich. I don't need to be famous or powerful, Andy. That's all I wanted. And you screwed it up with your curiosity. Do you even remember how many nights we've sat out here just holding each other and watching the moon? We've probably only turned that big TV on a handful of times since we moved in here. Not because there's nothing on, but because we've just never needed it. That's all gone, Andy. I agreed to try this, but I'm truly not sure we can fix this. But it was only sex, and only one time. It just seems that you can't even try to get past it. I'm hurting too. I keep feeling like I'm just a broken toy to you right now. You aren't treating me like a human being who feels things and makes mistakes. You're acting like a spoiled little boy who got dirt on his fairy princess doll and doesn't want to play with her anymore because someone else touched it, she said. Andy, I know that you love sex. I do too. But there's a big difference between going out and screwing a hooker and what you and I used to do. It was far more than a physical act. It was special. It was like we brought our souls closer together by sharing our bodies. And now my fairy princess has shared her body with the troll from next door. We're basically no longer exclusive, so there's nothing special about it anymore. It's become cheaper. It's something that under the right set of circumstances anyone can have. So who or what will you get curious about next time, Andy? Who or whatever it is, I won't make the mistake of telling you about it, she snapped. I see what being honest got me. Next time I'll try lying. Andy, right now, we're only held together by the thinnest thread you can imagine. If there ever is a next time, we'd be done so fast you wouldn't even know it. You wouldn't even see me until we met in court. I was so close to dumping your cheating wife this time that I stopped talking before I said something I'd regret. Even in the dark, I could see Andy crying. I realized that I'd let my anger push me into saying things that I shouldn't have. Good night, Andy, I said. I'm sorry for the things I said. I shouldn't have said them. I guess I'm still angry about this whole thing. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe we should have gone to counseling before we moved back in together. I'm glad you let me move back. I couldn't take sleeping alone another night, she said. I'd have gone crazy if I had to spend another day without seeing you. Why do you think I came up to your job yesterday? I know it's going to take a lot of work to get you back, Eric, but I'm going to do it. I swear that things with us are going to be even better, she said. Now let's go to bed. She followed me upstairs, and when I got to the master bedroom, came in and sat down on the bed. She pulled her shirt over her head and started taking off her clothes. Andy, what are you doing? I asked. Getting undressed so we can go to bed, silly, she smiled. Andy, we won't be sleeping together or doing anything else for a while, I said. There are plenty of bedrooms in the house, pick one. Andy tried her best to hide her tears. You aren't even trying, she said. Maybe you don't love me anymore. The next morning, I was up, showered, and almost gone before Andy got out of bed. I was backing out of the driveway when Andy came running out of the house, still in only her bra and panties. She tapped on my window, and I let it down. I left you a key on the island in the kitchen, I said. I hadn't gotten around to canceling your credit cards, so they still work. I rolled the window back up only to have her tap on it again. You were going to leave without telling me goodbye, she asked. I noticed that you don't want to kiss me or touch me, but you need to say goodbye to me just to be polite. Andy, you were asleep, I said. I didn't want to wake you. I didn't sleep very well anyway, and you can wake me anytime you want. Even if it's just to tell me goodbye, or good night, or good morning. Even better if you wanted to kiss me, or hug me, or feel me up, or screw me, she said. No matter what I've done, I'm still yours and I always will be. I know I messed up, but I am trying to fix it. When I got to work, Myrna asked me, are you back with Andy? Kind of, on a trial basis, I said. Good. Maybe you can get your head out of your bum now, she said. She left you a stack of messages that all say the same thing. She loves you. You must have screwed the shit out of her last night. Why not give her your new phone number so she can call you herself and save me any future embarrassment? When I got home that night, I was feeling better. I said hi to Andy when I came in and started changing for my run. Is it okay if I invite a couple of guests for dinner? She asked. Andy, it's your house too. You don't have to ask me things like that. You never did before. Actually, I was kind of glad that we wouldn't be having another awkward night alone. I met Mel coming out of her house. We ran our usual slow 4-mile loop and talked all the way. I couldn't help noticing that Mel had dropped a lot of weight, especially around her tummy, and she was looking really good. I bought a new swimsuit today, she said. It's still a one-piece, but Mike's eyes bugged out when he saw it on me. He came over towards me and reached for me, until I told him that if he touched me, I'd cut his balls off. How are things with you two? She asked. Weird, I answered. Our chemistry is just gone. It's like I'm starting all over with a new person, and I get so angry at her sometimes. It'll pass, said Mel. The first time Mike cheated on me, it took over 6 months for me to even sleep in the same room with him. Another month before we had sex, and even then, it just wasn't the same. Give it some time. When we got done, I said goodbye to Mel and started to go into the house. Andy opened the door for me and then went to talk to Mel. When I got out of the shower, I went downstairs to see what Andy had made for dinner. It smelled great. I went out onto the deck and immediately got pissed. Mike was sitting nervously in one of my lounge chairs. "I told you not to ever set foot in my house again, a-hole," I snapped.